Greetings, children of the screen. Your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here once again, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Today we're going to be doing what may be the first in several videos of me talking about things related to filmmaking. Today specifically, and for some of these, we're going to be talking about writing, in terms of writing your screenplay, but what I want to talk about today can kind of apply to writing in general. Now, obviously, I'm not the greatest writer in the world. I'm a pretty solid storyteller, but don't get me wrong, I'm not a great writer in terms of punctuation and all that kind of stuff. I have my shortcomings, very much so. So I'm definitely not an authority, but there are some things that I've noticed through the multiple screenplays and various other forms of writing that I've done, and so I figured that as I start talking more about films, that this would be a good place to kind of fit some of these stuff in, as they all pertain, at least in some form, to screenwriting. So today what we're going to be talking about is cliches. Now, we all know what a cliche is. We see them all the time in books, television, movies, songs, trends. We see them everywhere because they are just everywhere in the world. And in general, cliches are thought of in a negative way because by their very nature, a cliche is something that is played out and overdone. However, when we approach writing and when we approach creative endeavors, I think there is such a negative connotation to the idea of the cliche that people kind of reject them on face value without ever exploring the cliche any further. So, essentially, what I'm saying is a cliche always bad? Because the thing that people tend to forget, or choose to forget, is that the reason a cliche is because at some point in time, someone arguably did it well enough, and it resonated with enough people that it was something that was then proliferated throughout multiple other medias and genres and all that kind of stuff. It just continued on to the point where eventually we'd all seen it, we'd all heard it, and we were all tired of it. But back at some point, it was a positive. And the other thing to keep in mind is that once an idea is introduced into fiction or into writing or really into anything, at a certain point, if that catches on and becomes popular, it will inevitably be a cliche if it, manages to stick around long enough. So, like, if you go back and you look in the most classic works of literature, or, again, if you're talking about music, or you're talking about, painted art, or drawn art, or fashion, or any of those things, if you go back and look at some of the most, hailed things, eventually what you're going to realize is it is riddled with cliches. And maybe at the time that came out, that wasn't a cliche. Maybe it was the first one to use that idea, or that concept, or that visual gag, or maybe it was the fifth, but it's the one that really resonated with people more than anything else. So I often find that when people give me scripts to read or we're talking about things they're working on, when something comes up that's a cliche, they just dismiss it out of hand. But the truth is, the world is made out of cliches, and there is some part of that cliche that is valid to the human experience. So what you really have to do, instead of dismissing it, is look at that cliche. Do a little research, because as a writer, that is part of your fucking job, okay? Is to do research. Do a little research. Find out what the earliest uses of that cliche are. Because you had that idea for a reason. Maybe it was just because you've seen it a million places, or maybe because that idea really does say something integral about your story or your characters. And then by going back and finding how that thing was originally used and why it did so well, you'll begin to re-understand the versatility of it and why it worked. And then you can apply it in a way that is not the same as it used to be, but by seeing that, you can build your own path parallel to it and explore a different issue or a different side of the cliche, make it fresh again. Because again, we are all cliches. Everything we see is a cliche at this point. Everything's been done before. At the point we're at now, all we're doing is remixing. So it is ridiculous to assume, for any reason, that there is any part of the history of our creative works as human beings that can't be remixed into something that is good, or something that says something not new, but unique, or different enough, or something that cuts through all the BS, because again, just like a photocopy, a cliche, as it gets used again and again and again and again, it just loses whatever originally made it important. So if you can go back to the original, and do an original copy or, an original scan. The metaphor's breaking down. You understand what I'm saying, though, guys. Go back to the original and find a new take on it, find a new approach to it. And then when people read it, they're not going to see the cliche. They're going to see the original thing that resonated in the first place, because that is a strong idea. And then they're going to see what you did with it that's new, because no one else is bothering to do it. Everyone else is just rejecting the cliche out of hand. So anyway, guys, those are just my thoughts on cliches. Again, my writing, everyone's writing, is full of cliches. You can always, if you really want to, you can always boil any idea down to a cliche because everything's been done before. But just because something's been done before doesn't mean you can't find a cool way to do it. And you're a unique person. That's why you're a writer, is to bring your own unique voice. Okay? So use the cliches. Find a way to make them work for you. And if they don't work for your story or your characters, then get rid of them. But don't reject something that could be a great or beautiful idea just because your first instinct is, well, that's a little cliche. Huh. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like, share it with some friends, and if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe so you can check out all the dope content I have coming out here in the future. Thank you very much. Nerd Scum, out.